In this lesson, we'll learn how to plug a texture into the alpha channel so that we can create a semi-transparent texture on top of an existing texture. Okay, so I have this texture here on my little salt shaker, and I'd like to add sort of a pattern on top of that without having to go in and duplicate the enamel, or rather having to go in and really edit that texture very heavily. So what I can do is just create a semi-transparent texture that will just wrap right on top of this one. Now if I wanted to have the same kind of shiny properties as this enamel, all I have to do is duplicate that and then make some subtle changes. So what I'm going to do is just control drag this enamel over, and then I'm going to double click that to open it up. And I'm going to turn off the color channel for a moment because I don't want any color coming through for that blue color. We're going to change that in a little bit. But the reflection and the specular I wanted to be the same, so we'll leave those there. Now to get the pattern that I'm wanting, we're going to want to plug in to our alpha channel. So go ahead and enable your alpha, and then we'll go through our texture property here, and we'll load up an image that you have in your texture folder in your Cinema 4D files and your project files. So we'll grab that canister pattern Pong file, go ahead and open that up, and you can see what that does is it basically cuts out all of the black areas you see in this pattern and leaves all of the white areas. So we get this nice pattern here. And you can see that whenever this comes back through, we're not really seeing anything on our actual canister because it hasn't been applied yet. So let's just go ahead and apply that. I'm just going to grab it and place it on that body polygon object. And then I'm also going to open this back up because there will be a few changes we need to make once that is there. So far so good. It has some really nice, very shiny properties to it, very similar to what we have going on with the enamel since it was made from that. But I don't really like the color being black. So we don't have to get our color through the alpha. That's just controlling what is going to show up on this particular material. So what we can do is go to our color channel, enable that, and let's change the color so that it's not the same color as the background. Otherwise, we won't be able to see it. So I'm just going to go into this, and let's make this kind of a very, very light yellow, almost white, just barely off white really. And that's going to place that pattern on top of the blue, just like the black was before, but now with a color that just looks a little bit better with our current scheme. Now, I also have a bump map that we can add to this. And basically, to make a bump map for something like this, if you want this pattern to be raised up or pressed down, all you have to do is take what you used for your alpha. So you can see my alpha here. The black areas are transparent. The white areas are opaque. And anywhere that was black, anything that was transparent, you want to make 50% gray. So I've gone ahead and made a texture like that, and we can go ahead and load that up so that you can see what that looks like in the thumbnail. So we've got 50% gray as the background for that bump, and then anything I want to stick up off of the bump so it looks embossed upwards is going to be lighter than gray, so I've got white there. Anything I want to be depressed, I would choose black. Now if you invert this or do something wrong, that's okay because the strength of it is able to be reversed. So if I take this down to negative 62 or so, that's going to start to press it in, whereas positive 62 would push it out. Now we're not seeing any changes here because I haven't checked it on yet. So let's go ahead and check it on and see what the emboss up with this bump map looks like on our little model. So you can start to see that some shadows are forming that really come in there and help make it feel raised off of the surface of this canister. So that's looking really good. I really like the way that this 62% looks, but if you feel that that's too much, you want it to be more subtle, you can always turn the strength down, and that's going to make it not have just quite such a high profile off of the enamel canister, the blue part of it. So you can play around with that a little bit more if you want to. Now let's say maybe this isn't on your canister the way that you want it to be. In my case, this has been UV'd, and so I know that they're going to be laid out properly. But if this hasn't been UV'd, you can go in, and especially with textures like this where it's just a very simple shape, you can usually just go into the texture tag like this and start playing with the offset in the U or the length in the U. We'll give that a second. So you could see when I played with the offset, it just kind of spun that around a little bit. And then the length in the U would stretch this, you know, if I wanted it to look like there were more, or if maybe I wanted there to be more this way. I can start playing with those properties just by changing the length of the U and the V to acquire that texture kind of in a different way. And I actually really like the way this looks, where I can see a little bit more of the pattern by sort of scaling it down by means of changing the U and V lengths. And because it is taller than it is wide, you do have to do those independently. If you did the same number, it might look a little bit strange. Now I also have my tiles set up here, which you could start to change as well if you wanted to go in and edit something like that. So I think this is looking really good for this texture on here. Really makes it feel like this is very integrated, and the bump map gives it a very nice touch. So that is how you can add a texture on top of an existing texture without affecting the texture underneath it and having to go in and edit that material. So you can really quickly and easily set something like that up just using the alpha channel. And if you're feeling like you want to go above and beyond, then you can add a bump map pretty easily as well if it's a simple texture like this that is being applied. Okay, so let's move on to our next lesson, where we're going to be talking about reflections and clear objects and getting a balance between having enough reflectiveness while still maintaining the transparency of your object. So stick around and we'll be talking about that in our next lesson.